Sophia was a woman who once dreamed of having a perfect family. She had married the love of her life, James, and together they built a cozy home full of joy and laughter. It was the kind of happiness everyone hopes for in marriage. But behind her smiles, there was a sadness Sophia couldn't shake off. Sophia couldn't have children. For years, she carried the sadness of not becoming a mother. Every time she got pregnant, she would feel hopeful, only for the baby to mysteriously die by the 3rd month. No doctors could explain why it kept happening, and there were no signs or warnings. It felt like something strange and scary was going on. James, her loving husband, was always there for her. He was kind and patient, always telling Sophia, "We are strong together. Our time will come." He would hold her whenever she felt like crying. But even though he comforted her, Sophia could sense that James was getting frustrated with each loss. There was something else that made Sophia uneasy: James' mother, Madame Cecilia. Madame Cecilia often visited them without warning, and her visits felt strange to Sophia. Each time she came, she made a weird rule: by midnight, Sophia had to be in bed, with the lights off, and asleep. Madame Cecilia was very strict about this, which made Sophia uncomfortable. One night, Sophia asked, "Mummy, why do I have to sleep exactly at midnight, and in total darkness?" Madame Cecilia smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "It's tradition, my dear. It's for your own good. Trust me, it's best that way," she replied. Sophia didn't understand, but she didn't argue. After all, Madame Cecilia was her husband's mother. Still, Sophia couldn't get rid of the uneasy feeling. Things got even scarier when Sophia started having strange and frightening dreams every time she was pregnant. In her dreams, she would be in a dark forest, with thick fog all around. Suddenly, a cat with burning red eyes would appear and jump at her. The most terrifying part was that the cat had Madame Cecilia's face. In the dream, the cat would hiss and growl at Sophia, then eat her unborn baby. Sophia would wake up sweating, her heart pounding. When Sophia told James about the dream, he said, "Babe, you're just stressed. My mother is not a cat. She loves you." But the dream felt too real, and it kept happening. When Sophia got pregnant for the 4th time, she was scared. She felt like something needed to change. One night, she said to James, "Please, whatever you do, don't tell your mother about this pregnancy. I have a bad feeling." James looked confused. "But why, honey? She's your mother too. She would want to know." Sophia hesitated but then told him about the dreams again. "Every time I get pregnant, I dream about her as a cat, and she always eats the baby. I know it sounds crazy, but please, let's keep it from her this time." James was quiet for a long moment, but finally, he nodded. "All right, honey. I won't tell her." Sophia felt relieved. Maybe, just maybe, things would be different this time. James traveled a lot for work, and a week after Sophia asked him not to tell his mother, he was gone again. Sophia was left alone in their home, trying to stay calm and hopeful. For the first time in years, she started to believe that this pregnancy might go well. But as the 2nd month approached, that familiar sense of fear began to creep back into her heart. Sophia tried to dismiss the dream, telling herself it was just a nightmare, but deep down, fear clung to her. One night, as she sat in the living room reading a book to distract herself, there was a loud knock at the door. The sound startled Sophia, her heart skipping a beat. It was late, well past 11 p.m. No one ever came by at this hour. Her hands trembled as she put down the book and walked slowly to the door. She opened it cautiously, her breath catching in her throat. Standing there, shrouded in the darkness, was Cecilia, her mother-in-law. Cecilia's face was expressionless, her eyes sharp as they locked with Sophia's. "Sophia," she said softly, though her voice seemed to echo through the quiet night. "I heard the news." Sophia's heart sank. How could she know? James had promised not to tell anyone, and Sophia hadn't told a soul. Yet, here stood Cecilia, her presence like a shadow looming over Sophia's fragile hope. "I don't understand," Sophia stammered, stepping back. Cecilia took a step forward, her eyes narrowing. "You should be in bed by now, Sophia. And the lights should be off." Sophia stood frozen in the doorway, her heart pounding. How did she know? James had promised. Her mind raced with questions, but before she could think of any answers, Madame Cecilia pushed past her, stepping into the house as if she belonged there. "You look surprised," Cecilia said, her voice cool but filled with something unsettling. Her gaze on Sophia was sharp and unyielding. "You must know by now that I always find out. A good mother always knows." Sophia swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Of course, Mama. Please, come in." As Madame Cecilia entered, the air seemed to change, becoming heavy and tense, making Sophia's skin prickle. Sophia closed the door behind her, fighting the urge to flee from the house. Cecilia took her usual seat in the center of the living room, like a queen reclaiming her throne. "Sophia," she said, her voice commanding, "you know what time it is. You should be in bed, and the lights should be off. It's not safe to stay up this late." Sophia forced herself to remain calm. She had heard this lecture many times, but tonight it felt different, more threatening. "Yes, Mama. I was just about to go to bed," she said, trying to keep the tension out of her voice. "Good," Cecilia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You know what I expect, no lights, and you should be sleeping by now." Sophia nodded, though inside, every part of her wanted to question why this strange rule mattered so much. But she didn't dare ask, not tonight, not with the unease that had already settled deep in her bones. Sophia made her way to the bedroom, her heart pounding as she followed the routine Madame Cecilia always insisted on. She turned off the lights in the living room, plunging the house into darkness. Cecilia followed her down the hallway, her presence lingering like a shadow. As Sophia entered her bedroom, she flicked off the lights and slid under the covers, her hands trembling. "Good night, Mama," she called out, hoping to end the conversation quickly. Good night, my daughter," Cecilia replied from just outside the door, her voice carrying a tone that sounded more like a warning than a farewell. "Remember, sleep deeply." Sophia lay in bed, her heart racing. Something felt terribly wrong. She closed her eyes, trying to force herself to sleep, but it didn't take long for the familiar dream to creep back into her mind. Once again, she found herself in the dark forest. The fog was thick and suffocating, the air cold, and an eerie silence wrapped around her. Her breath quickened as she walked deeper into the forest, knowing what was coming but powerless to stop it. And then, just as before, the cat appeared, slinking out of the shadows. Its tongue glistened in the moonlight. Sophia's heart seized as she saw its red, glowing eyes fixed on her. And there, flickering on the cat's body, was Madame Cecilia's face. The cat hissed and leapt towards her, wrapping itself around her body, sinking its teeth into her abdomen. Sophia screamed, but no sound came out. She could feel the pain, feel it devouring her baby. Sophia woke with a violent start, gasping for air. Her body was drenched in sweat, her clothes sticking to her skin. The room spun around her, and her breath came in short, ragged bursts. Her heart raced as she tried to calm herself, but the fear from the dream clung to her like a vice. "Not again," Sophia whispered, clutching her chest. She struggled to catch her breath, her mind still trapped in the nightmare. Panic clawed at her insides, threatening to overwhelm her. She tried to focus, but the terror wouldn't let go. She sat up in bed, her stomach churning with pain. "No, please, not again," Sophia whimpered, feeling a familiar ache low in her belly. It was happening, the same pain she felt every time she lost a child, especially as the second month approached. Frantically, Sophia reached for the small lamp on her nightstand. Her hands were shaking so badly that it took several attempts to turn it on. When the soft light finally flickered to life, her heart stopped. There, on her stomach, was a massive cat. Its body was coiled around her, its weight pressing down on her abdomen. Sophia could feel its cold, scaly skin against hers. Its red eyes were locked onto hers, and its mouth was open, as if it was trying to devour what was inside her. Sophia screamed, though her voice barely escaped her throat as terror gripped her. The cat didn't move, it stayed there, its glowing red eyes like burning embers in the night. Its mouth twitched as if trying to bite into Sophia's womb. The sight of the huge creature lying over her filled her with absolute terror. But something deep inside Sophia snapped, an instinct to survive that she had never felt before. In a panic, she grabbed the lamp from the nightstand. Without a second thought, she swung it at the cat. The lamp struck the creature's head, and the sound that followed wasn't a hiss, but a low, human-like groan of pain. It was unmistakable, the voice of her mother-in-law. Sophia froze for a moment, unable to comprehend what she had just heard. How could a cat sound like Madame Cecilia? But there was no time to think. The cat moved slightly, its glowing red eyes flickering with anger. Sophia scrambled off the bed, her mind racing. She needed something stronger, something that would end this nightmare once and for all. Without thinking, she ran to the kitchen, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. She yanked open a drawer and grabbed the biggest knife she could find. Her hands were trembling, but she held on to the blade with all the strength she could muster. As Sophia moved back towards the bedroom, she whispered under her breath, "In the name of Jesus, I command you to die and leave me alone." When Sophia entered the room, the cat was still there, watching her with those terrifying red eyes. It seemed to sense her intention, and she could feel its energy shift. It was less confident, more defensive. Sophia gripped the knife tightly and approached it with a determination she had never known. "In the name of Jesus." Sophia shouted again, raising the knife above her head. She struck the cat with the blade, driving it deep into its thick, scaly body. Blood spurted from the wound, thick and dark, staining the sheets in her hands. The cat writhed in pain, its body thrashing wildly. But Sophia didn't stop. She kept stabbing, again and again, declaring the name of Jesus with each blow. With every strike, the cat began to lose strength. Its once massive body, which had seemed so frightening, started to shrink. Blood poured from its wounds as its strength faded. Sophia could feel the cat dying beneath her hands. Then something even more shocking happened. As the cat shrunk, its form began to change, its fur faded, and its body morphed and twisted. Her heart stopped as she watched in disbelief. The cat wasn't just shrinking, it was transforming. Within moments, the massive cat was gone, and lying there on the bed, soaked in blood, was Cecilia. Sophia staggered backward, dropping the knife in shock. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the lifeless body. Her mother-in-law's face was pale, her eyes still open but empty, staring at the ceiling. There was no mistaking it, Cecilia was dead. Sophia should have been horrified. She should have felt guilt, fear, or something, but instead, a strange sense of relief washed over her. Deep down, she had always known, always felt that Cecilia was somehow responsible for her childlessness, for the mysterious deaths of her unborn babies. Now, as Sophia stood there staring at her lifeless form, she felt something close to peace. She knew now that Cecilia had been the one tormenting her all along. Sophia sank to the floor, her body trembling, the knife lying beside her. The room was silent except for the sound of her ragged breathing. The nightmare was over. Sophia had won. The next few hours were a blur. Sophia cleaned up the blood, trying to erase any sign of the horrific events that had unfolded. Her mind was foggy, but one thing was clear, she needed to tell James. When her husband returned from his travels a few days later, Sophia sat him down and told him everything. James listened as she recounted the events of that night, from the cat to the transformation to the blood that now stained their sheets. "Sophia, are you sure about this?" James asked, his voice trembling. He was clearly shaken, unable to process the possibility that his own mother had been involved in such dark supernatural forces. "How could my mother be responsible for all this?" Sophia took his hand, looking straight into his eyes. "Honey, I know it sounds unbelievable, but I swear to you, I saw her. I fought her. I have no doubt she was behind it all. Every time I lost a child, every time I dreamed of the cat, it was her." James was silent for a long time, his face pale and his eyes distant. He was struggling to understand, to reconcile the woman he had loved and respected all his life with the creature Sophia described. She could see the war in his heart, the battle between his love for his mother and the truth Sophia was laying before him. Finally, James nodded slowly. "I don't want to believe it, Sophia, but I trust you. If you say this is what happened, then I believe you." His words were a weight lifted from Sophia's chest. She had feared that he wouldn't believe her, that he would think she was losing her mind. But hearing his support, even through his confusion, was enough. After Cecilia's death, everything changed. The house felt lighter, as if a dark cloud had been lifted. The oppressive energy that had hung over Sophia for so long was gone. And most importantly, her pregnancy progressed without any problems. Months later, Sophia gave birth to two beautiful twins, a boy and a girl. The joy that filled her heart when she held them in her arms was indescribable. After years of heartache and loss, her dream had finally come true. She was a mother. James was overjoyed, and despite everything that had happened, they both agreed to name their twin children Emmanuel and Mary. This is the end of the story. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to support my channel by subscribing. It really helps a lot.